church, it behooves us to truly approach our fellow man with great regard, and great honor, and great respect. We never know until we look in the shoes of other people, what they've been through, where they're going, and the power that has been vested in them to be in a particular path and perfect it. Because we have inherited much from our ancestors, much that's good, and we've inherited much of their trouble. Now, getting back to your question and Mary's question of how do you know? I think you can tell by the clarity in a person's presence, whether they're bearing the weight of some inherited opportunity for growth versus chewing upon a story that is not particularly serving a purpose to anyone, most especially the person that's chewing on it. This is what I really wanted you to see yesterday. And as I said, it's not that stories are bad. Oh my gosh, we can tell the most wonderful stories. How many of you are familiar with Chicken Soup for the Soul? It's a great book that is actually full of simple stories. And it's amazing that these people have become multi-millionaires by sharing good stories. We love good stories. Why? Because they bring out the good in us. They make us feel good, and they begin, it's like yeast put on the bread. They make the goodness in us rise. Okay? Now, I don't want you to miss this. This is something that could have been subtle. You could have overlooked it, and I don't want you to, because I was giving you a really important reversal of inner understanding yesterday by giving you an opportunity to see that when you let go of the stories that embrace our sadness or the negative emotions just, they put, because it's not who you are. And when you bring in the good stories or the positive emotions and you really, really embrace them, the goodness in you begins to grow. Now, here's why I want you to really understand the importance of that, because we have inherited a legacy, especially in the Western world, but to some degree in all cultures, except for those that are still very close to their indigenous roots. I've never found this mistake in indigenous cultures, but I have found it in our so-called advanced cultures that advanced through empires and control. One of the first mechanics of establishing empire and control is to convince people that they're basically bad. It's from that you're able to instill fear in people, and thus hypnosis. All of the empires of control have been built around hypnosis, conformity, and the conviction that is drilled into us that you are basically bad. Yeshua did not preach that, but those who came after him did. Those who wanted to build an empire, a Christian empire, and align it with the Roman Empire. And then that empire became further empires. All empires have this in common, is the basic indoctrination that you are fundamentally bad. Now, what comes from that is a disability, a huge handicap to really take charge of your life. Because I hope you saw yesterday that when you confront the negative emotions, they go away. But if you're living under the persuasion that you're basically bad, you're also going to assume that if you focus on negative emotions, they'll get bigger. If you really focus upon something negative, it will get worse. Right? And then you must be terribly obedient. And never engage with bad thought, ever. Or else you will become bad again. Because if given any opportunity to engage in negativity, that's what will grow in you because you're basically bad. That is what has driven people out of the church. Because it is not what Yeshua taught. He said, be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. We know from the most ancient part of the book of Genesis, you were created in the image of God. And God is not good and bad. God is good. What we see in the world that we would call bad is a derivative result of not accepting responsibility for our actions, not resolving our stories, or passing those stories on to the next generation, leaving our next generation with an environmental problem, or leaving our next generation with a legacy of the last war that was waged, unresolved politics, hatred, creating cultures that hate each other, that then our children and our grandchildren are going to have to deal with. These are derivative. Was I getting too loud?
No,
Okay. These are derivative results of irresponsibility. Not being who you really are. And one of the reasons irresponsibility accumulates is because we're afraid to touch it. We're afraid that if we touch it, like a black plague, we'll become it. Because we're basically bad. We don't want to touch. We don't want to touch. If our father was an alcoholic, we don't want to touch what our father did. We don't want to be there. We don't want to look at it. We want to run from it. So these are courageous souls that allow themselves to be born into conditions where they can actually purge and reform from the inside out the sins of the father left behind. Our forefathers, our ancestors, that did not accept responsibility for their action, but that isn't because they also weren't basically good. They were. They were, but they were told they weren't. So whenever anything bad happened, they ran from it. They were afraid they would be punished for it. Instead of accepting it, transmuting it, lifting it up, and lifting it to a higher plane that is worthy of human wisdom. They ran from it because they were afraid if they touched it, it would become bigger or it would infect their soul.